if you ask a person, what debts do you have? You'd be very surprised. Because even though car finance isn't seen as a debt, it's just seen as what we pay, that's a debt.
It's a debt.
So does every single pension automatically invest your money?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's not a savings account, it's an investment. Yeah.
I thought that they were just a savings account.
Time is money, so spend yours listening to me talk about things that are important to me and my people.
Time is money.
Hello and welcome to the final episode of Series 7. We have been walking through money and finances on each episode. As you know, the format of this show is we have a series with one big topic and every episode goes into the topic more and more as I'm joined by an expert guest. The expert guest for this series is Kia. She is Kia of Pennies to Pounds podcast. Check out her podcast, check out her stuff. She's brilliant. Last episode, we spoke about the things you need to know in terms of finances, where you need to start, basically your starter pack for improving your financial situation. And if you need a little snippet, there's one playing now.
But credit isn't a bad thing. Credit is a tool when used correctly. If you're buying something expensive, over £100 or under £30,000, you've got Section 75 of the Credit Reference, the Credit Act, which will protect your any purchases, completely protect it. So if a company goes bust and you didn't get your item, but you pay for it on a credit card and save £100, covered.
We would like to conclude this series with any more gems from you, but also taking a deep dive into the state that crime can leave on your finances and also financial crime, because they usually go hand in hand. So let me paint a picture for you.
Go on.
16, 17-year-old Maya, bobbing along, friends with a lot of people, and all of the boys I was friends with all did some form of crime, either selling drugs, fraud, just them two. At the time, young, dumb, happy-go-lucky, bad boy, everyone's got to get it. I don't, how are they any worse than the politicians? People are bad out here. What are they doing that's really bad? If they're selling drugs, if they're not getting it from them, they're going to get it from somebody else. They aren't the problem. Financial crime, oh, well, the bank's going to refund the people anyway. It's not that deep. And you can never come back to us. There's always a thing in the system, a loop in the loophole. We can find it. We're good. These were my friends. I was around a lot of them and I saw how the whole thing worked on both ends. And I don't think that is very unique of any person who's grown up in London, really. However, I'm a grown woman today and I do not co-sign any of that. And also I have seen, as I've become an adult, the effects that has when you try to enter society from a perspective of having credit and making big financial decisions and even purchasing assets. It really does get in the way. I think people really forget that when you do something that is illegal and you can't have the normal, not even the normal, but the average person's steps with society, i.e. getting a bank account, being paid into the bank account, having direct debits, having things in your name, and you use cash for everything in what's becoming very, very increasingly a cashless society, you do lose your ability to handle it. So when you are in a position where you need to, make a claim on your car insurance or something completely unrelated, because all of that world seems so daunting, you don't know how to maneuver. So you're constantly dependent on somebody else to do it. And typically it's a girl. And then the girl, because the person that's getting her to do these things has no idea about this world, may put bills and things in her name. They won't then pay them because they have no concept of there being any consequences for any problems with the bank or anything. And then the girl's credit and everything else is ruined as well. So it's a knock-on effect for everyone. So that's just the first message I want to preface this episode with. And then I want to give it to you to take.
You set the scene pretty well. You set the scene pretty well. I think financial crime is an interesting one because you and I, we spoke about this before. We both grew up in inner city London, in East London. And like you said, I don't think it's very unique because I had a similar thing. I didn't have necessarily friends who did fraud personally, but there was a situation when I was growing up, one of my friends at the time, she had a boyfriend and this boyfriend was doing fraud. I was not aware of this. And then she didn't really include me in this decision-making process that she made, which was a poor one, in case you didn't know where the end is going. It was a poor decision that she made. But all I knew was that a couple of weeks after she'd made this decision, she was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I gave him a bank account so he could put some money in. He said he's going to leave me a couple of grand in there. And at the time, you can argue because it was crime, like it's crime is crime, right? I'm not justifying it. But I could understand her intentions. I didn't agree with them. But I understood she had family, she wanted to help, blah, blah. And she's like, well, if my boyfriend's going to give me a couple of grand, like that would help my family knowing.
And I also stand by, we do live in an unfair, unjust society, and there are politicians doing far worse with far more. I stand by that. But that doesn't excuse all of the above.
Exactly. So I understood her thought process. I didn't agree with it, but I understood how she got there. Anyway, a couple of weeks have passed. I think the money had gone in, but then he'd taken everything out. So she's now confused, like, I thought you can give me a little bit, like, I don't understand. Anyway, long story short, she got a letter through the post that her mum had opened. Because, you know, it's that age, we're like 15, 16, your parents open your post. Mum had opened it, and her mum fully didn't understand it, but basically her bank said, you've been blacklisted. So she's now come to me in tears, told me the whole backstory that I was unaware of before. And then now we basically went to my dad. Because I'm telling you, my dad was everyone's dad growing up. He still is, right? So all my friends will come to my dad with any kind of situation. Went to my dad, we told him the whole situation. Obviously, my dad was like, you should never have done that. But we're not talking retrospectively now. We're here.
Yeah.
So going forward, and she was working a job. She was the only one at the time who had a job. So now where's your wages go? You need to get paid. So for that time...
What, are you going to call up your job and be like, my bad, changing accounts because I'm blacklisted?
Exactly. But even then, she couldn't open up any other ones.
So you're blacklisted from all banks?
Yeah. It was a whole serious thing. She had to go through all of that. She was blacklisted for about 6 years. Yeah.
So then they give you somebody else's account and you pay into that or something?
Yeah. 6 years she was blacklisted. But that was massive. And that was a very painful learning curve. You'll be happy to know that she's gotten past that. Her credit score's good. She's gotten way past that. But that was something that was preventable, that she didn't have to do. And like you said, financial crime, her boyfriend wasn't that apologetic. He was kind of like, oh, yeah, you know, be fine. Like, I remember he said, like, they always say that. They're like they always say that. You can go and apply for another one. Don't worry, man. Like, ignore that bank and go to another one. Because he was so flippant about it. But it was like, well, no, she can't apply for it. They all rejected her. They all said, we've got reports back because there's things that you can ask the bank why they reject you. I remember my dad and I were with her on the phone, like asking why they rejected. Because we're basically just trying to clarify that she is actually blacklisted. And that is the reason. Every single bank she applied to said, you have been blacklisted. We've got your name on the blacklist. We cannot give you an account. And it's such a big thing. And I find that obviously there's girls who do fraud, but I was mainly encountering boys who did fraud. And a lot of them, like you said, it's just like, it's a middleman thing. They're not going to come back to me. It's just money, man. Like, it's not even that deep. Like, we can just do that.
The bank refunds it. The bank robs us anyway.
People don't realise that not every time the bank is going to refund someone because you have to prove that it's fraud. There's so many different loopholes that they're not thinking about. You've taken someone's 2K that could have been their life savings. You don't know if that person was ill and needed that money to go pay for medication. You've taken 2K. The bank doesn't refund the next day. It's a process, like we mentioned in the last episode. It's a process to get any kind of money back from the bank that isn't credit. So you don't know what impact that has on people. I know there's probably people now who are doing fraud during Christmas. There's probably people who are there saying, I'm going to get my family's Christmas presents. I've been saving, working all year for this money to treat my family to Christmas. And they might wake up one day and have nothing in their account because someone's defrauded them. And I remember I had a situation actually with my credit card a couple of years ago where I didn't really use it, like credit card. I kind of just had it there. And I remember I went and I checked. And for the past 8 months, someone been using my credit card. There's Uber Eats here, Just Eat there. And my dad was like, did you give it to anyone? You know, like, did you buy anything with friends you put in their account? I said, no, I don't use this credit card. And I realised that they'd taken about £500 from me. So because I had a direct debit set up, it just cleared it every month. So I'm not really aware of what I'm clearing. And I realised I'm paying for these people who's defrauding me. My bank gave it back in this instance, but it's not something that you should rely on. And these fraudsters shouldn't just assume that that's going to happen. And that only happened because it's on my credit card. Debit card might have been a different story. But because it's on my credit card, the company, I'd show them proof of my accounts. Like, this is my Uber account. I never used it on this, based on what was on my thing, on both of them, and they just gave it back to me.
So I think that's a good example with your friend that you told us where it went really bad.
Yeah.
And she got blacklisted from banks.
Yes.
Is that a reality that can happen?
Yeah.
If you are caught doing fraud?
Absolutely. That is probably the most likely outcome. I mean, prison, anything like that, jail time, yeah, potentially. But the most likely outcome is that banks will say, we will no longer give you an account. We're going to shut it down. And I've known a lot of people who have their bank accounts closed. And a lot of people think digital banks are more lenient. So, like your Monzos, your Starlings are more lenient.
Yeah.
Even those will send you a message in an app. Hey, you got a message. You go and say, yeah, your account's closed in 14 days. You need to remove all money from there. We're closing it down because we have suspicion of fraud. Done. There is no discussion to be had. You can call them up all you want. No discussion. Your bank account's closing. You better move your money somewhere else because you're not having it here. And that is what can happen. And now you're at least and you're thinking, well, where do I put my money now? I have to withdraw it. Where do I put it? What am I going to do? And that's what people don't think. You can't sit there and a lot of them say, I'll pay with cash anyway. There's places I've gone to, it's card only. Yeah. There is no cash to be had. They're not interested in cash.
That time's gone, I'll be honest.
And that was all because of COVID and all of that. Everything turned to cashless, which I think is a blessing in some ways. But you can't rely on cash like you used to. And it's just not a good thing to do. It's just not nice.
Yeah, obviously.
It's just not a nice thing to do.
That's the baseline, yeah. Because I think the reason I wanted to focus on financial crime, as well, we're going to go into other crimes in a minute, but the reason I want to focus on financial crime from this perspective is that is the one that, because it's to do with money and to do with bank, for some reason we all take that as less serious and less of ramifications on you. But actually, no, that maybe even has worse, because the bank can see you're savvy with this. Okay, I don't want any part in that then. And then blacklist you. And then if you think, when you're young, 15, 16, the worst that's going to mean is that your little part-time like retail job maybe doesn't get to pay into your account. And you've got to give your mum's account and pays into there. And every time you've got to have an awkward interaction with your mum every month or weekly or wherever to get the money out of her account. Cool. 6 years though. So that means from, let's say she was 15 when that happened, 21. 18, 19, 20, 21, those years, you're going to need your account. You're going to need to get paid more.
I'm pretty sure, from what I remember, she had to get phone contracts out in someone else's name because she couldn't get it in hers, because it has those ramifications. It's not just bank accounts. They can see it on other things.
Everything comes from your bank.
Exactly. So she couldn't get phone contracts in her own name. She put it in other people's names, which now means that she's almost like...
tied.
Yeah, she's tied to that, and she lost 4 years of building up her credit score. Where everyone else is starting from 18. I'm going to get a phone contract. I'm going to put this in my name, start building up your credit score. You've now foregone that and started at 21, which now makes it harder for you to try and build up your credit score from that age. But there is so much that comes from financial crime. And I think when you're younger, you can almost weather that storm a bit better. But when you're older, these things live on your credit file for 6 years. So even if you're blacklisted for 2 years, let's say, right, because of that, and you said, I'm changing, turning the corner, I'm a new person, I'm not going to do that anymore, you're still going to have 4 years of that on your credit file. So every time you apply for anything, they will show that you're blacklisted for fraudulent activity. It's always going to be there for 6 years. And I think it's still, lenders can still see it for another couple of years after that. If they want to, it won't be on your file, but they can still see that for a couple of years before it's completely wiped off. And all of that has an impact. If you want to buy a house one day, if you want to get a house in the next 5 years, but you're doing fraud now.
And then what about when you're doing other crimes, like selling drugs or whatever, and you only get paid in cash and you have no understanding of like banks and you don't have an account in your name and all of that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, selling drugs, one, terrible. I understand, like I said, similar with her, I understood how you got there, but don't agree with it. But all of that, I think people think there's so many shows on TV that show
glamorize.
They glamorize it, and you see them with wads of cash. You know, some of them may go into the bank and put some of it in, and they do other means
clean
for it.
it, and they clean a guy.
Yeah, I'm like, you are not in Snowfall. You are not Narcos. None of that, right? So if you go into the bank with £3,000 to put in your account, they're going to ask you, where has this come from? That's what's going to happen. I've had many times, especially when I started working for myself, where I'd get paid a lump sum and my bank would put it on hold because there's we need proof. Where's this coming from? And I said, I got paid from this job. I showed them an invoice to prove it because they're trying to stop illegal activity. So if you now walk into the bank as you are, you know, probably if depending on how you live, maybe you're just walking as yourself in a tracksuit, whatever, and you're putting in £3,000. You don't think that's going to set alarm bells? Even if you come in a suit, they're going to say, where's the 3K come from? If you work, what do you work? What do you work as?
Okay, family gave it to me.
Family, okay, who? Can we verify that?
Someone passed away and they left it to me.
That's fine. There's documentation to show that. Where's documentation? Where's the will? Where's that? We need to see that you was assigned this £3,000. If you can't prove that, then you're now going to ring alarm bells to that. And that's why a lot of these guys who do fall into these
and girls
traps. And girls, I'm not just doing that, but, you know, it's just the ones I've encountered, usually tends to be men, but men and women who are in this life don't have bank accounts. And a lot of them will come with the rhetoric that they don't trust the bank.
Oh, mate, that's the worst one.
They always say, I don't trust the bank, keep my money at home.
The plug. All right.
Yeah. Keep my money at home, all of that. And really and truly, it's just because you can't put money in the bank.
Yeah.
You've now chosen this path where you can't
also,
put it away.
If you think about it, that is a very stunted mentality, because maybe we're back in America in the times of segregation and you were just allowed bank accounts then, and typically Black people or minority people were treated worse in terms of getting banks. They would have the bank would just take their money sometimes and stuff like that. That fear was valid, don't get me wrong. But now, if you are saying that you're so scared of the bank and the bank's just going to take your money, it's better off being in a shoebox under your bed, you're taken from that time as if that fear is still valid for you today. And it's not the same reasons that fear is valid for you. The fear that you would have of the bank taking your money is because the bank would do a little check and realise, hang on, this isn't okay, and then take your money. So you're actually like eating off someone else's or another reality that doesn't apply to you for no reason.
Yeah.
Because you want to evade the fact that you can't put the money in the bank. And again, like I said, I'm not here to try and judge what you're doing and why you're doing it. But I've been on the other side of growing up when you get to the age of your early 30s, late 20s, and you want to start building, or even that you have to now because you might have had a prison sentence or two and you can't risk going and doing that again and going back. You have to start from scratch, less than scratch, because everybody's had 7 years, 8 years of doing it while you were doing that. And I'm just trying to help you prevent that. And I don't know if you can do, because the people always say I've got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like I can still do lidge, but I can also do that.
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
No, I don't think you can. I think there's... Well, we've seen it, right? If you look at... who was the one the other day? Nines got arrested for drugs, I'm pretty sure. And Nines is a massive rapper in the UK, right? He's doing well. He's making good money off his music. He makes good tunes. Yet he's still arrested. And he's, as you described, 1 foot in lidge and then still on the streets.
Literally the name of his album.
Literally, yeah. 1 foot there, 1 foot. And he's still got arrested. So if that's not proof to anyone that you can't be half-hearted, you have to either be fully legitimate or if you choose to go down that path and that is your decision, then that is what you're choosing. But the ramifications that come...
Financial situation, though, what will change? Do you think he would be in a situation where he might have to have different accounts, like other people's accounts where he has to get...
I'd be surprised if he didn't already have that before. I'd be surprised if he didn't already have accounts on people's names to begin with, because if he never really left the road live doing music, he probably already had issues with money. He might have had to go to his manager's account and then take his money out in cash. Might have... we're just speculating here, but it might have been something like that already, or maybe he had his own accounts. But I think now, when you come out for drugs and things like that, you obviously have to declare that you've been convicted for things, and that will have an impact on his money. And like, if you listen to a lot of music, 'cause I listen to a lot of UK rap, so I like UK rap. A lot of them will sing, whether or not they live it, by the way, because music is just music. So don't believe that all your favorite rappers are doing this. Some of it is just tunes, and they go home and they do their legitimate life, and they don't do any of that. But a lot of them will say stuff and they glamorize it. They say like, "Oh yeah, I had to buy all this in cash because I don't have a card, or I don't have a bank account, blah blah." And it's all like, yeah, you have everything in cash. I'm like, that's not a way that we need to be living. How do you pay for electricity?
Literally.
You have a house.
But like you said, it's very telling of your real reality then. And I think that's another key takeaway from this series, that you were saying when we talk about money, when we really talk about money and finances, like you said, if you say and you sit down with a person, I think you said this on episode 2, when you said about what's the questions you should ask a significant other about money, because obviously if you're going to build with each other, you need to know what's this person like with money. And you said, if you ask a person, what debts do you have? You'd be very surprised, because even though car finance isn't seen as a debt, it's just seen as what we pay. That's a debt.
It's a debt. Absolutely.
A mortgage, rent, all these things are debts. And from how people look in social media, and I do think social media is a massive part of it, but let's take social media out of it, music videos, interviews, whatever, you wouldn't think that they have any debt, because you think these lot are living good. And we still have the mentality that living good means everything's paid for, which it still does mean. So I think it is very telling when they say I pay for everything in cash, because you're right. How are you paying for electricity then? That can't be a direct debit. That means you can't be living on your own. That means you're definitely living at mum's. And that means there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not accurate to what your life you're saying you live, really.
And I've even had a number of friends And it always irks me because you know, you like, I'm sure you feel the same. You want the best for your friends, right? And I've had friends.
Sometimes. I'm joking.
But I've had friends.
Learn.
I know. I've had friends who will tell me like, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm talking to this guy, blah blah." I'm like, okay,
here
fine.
we go.
But then they'll come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, like what are you up to?" They're like, "Oh, I need to order so and so in Uber," and they're gonna give me back the cash when they see me, and that's already an indicator of a certain lifestyle. Because why do you need to order an Uber? And I remember one time I asked my friend, I said, "Why are you doing it?" And they were like, "Oh, their account got closed on Uber and they can't make a new account." When really and truly, they just don't have a bank card. That is the main reason. I mean, it might have been they got locked out of their account as well. Maybe Uber did close it.
Also not good.
Also not good, right? Maybe that was the case, but a lot of the times, 9 out of 10, if they're going to give you the cash, and I remember one time, she was like, I need the money from that person. And they were like, oh, yeah, like, I'll see you in a couple of days and I'll give you cash. And I was like to her, like, why don't you tell him to transfer it? He was like, oh, I've got to get my boys to transfer it to you. Like, I'll just give my boy the cash. And then I said to her, you need to run a mile from that man because there's nothing you can build tangibly with someone who lives a life like that.
Yeah, I've had many a conversation like that. I just think that this, like, okay, the purpose of this episode and podcast is to help maybe shine light on that, tell you something that you haven't already thought of. But the thing is, you know it. Do you know what I mean? That's why I don't have these conversations with people anymore, because you know the answers and you know what that means. If any boy anywhere is anything you see of how he's living doesn't match up to his finances or vice versa, then you know that he's either doing something illegal or he is recovering from some illegal thing that he's done. And you then need to be sure that that's what you want in your life. But if you do say that you do, then you can't complain that you haven't found somebody and there's no good guys out there and why can't I find them and all these things, because there are people, but you're just choosing the wrong ones.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's not what this series is about. No. Despite the fact that I could talk about that for ages. We've got other series for that. Pensions, something that you will not have as a drug dealer.
Yeah, pensions. So pensions is this very unsexy thing that, despite its name and despite how boring you may think it is essential. And one thing I'd say everyone should have. Like, I know we spoke about investments before, everything. They're all important. But if you didn't have an investment account, I'd rather you have a pension account.
Okay.
Like, that's how much I see it.
Wow. All right.
That's how important I
think
think
you're going to say that.
Yeah,
I've got lots on this, so you go first.
But with pensions, for anyone who doesn't know what a pension is basically a pot of money that you're going to draw down on when you hit retirement age. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you don't want to work yourself to the bone and get to whatever age, 80, 90, you're still working. You probably want to hit 60 and enjoy what's left of your life and have a good time. To do that, you're going to need money because you're going to start working. And that is the pot that you would have started saving into to be able to do such. We have things in the UK, we have the state pension, and I think I touched on it a little bit in previous episode. The state pension is what everyone gets as long as they've got enough qualifying years of national insurance contributions, aka you've worked in the workforce for long enough and paid national insurance. I think it's for 15 years at the moment, you should have paid national insurance, right? Which probably most people. You start working from 16, been contributing, yeah, that'll be you. Right now, I can't remember the exact number, but state pension weekly is like £170 a week, which isn't that much. If you actually think about how much you spend, obviously it'll be less. Hopefully when you get there, maybe you won't have a mortgage to be paying. You still have bills, but not a mortgage. But it's still not a hell of a lot of money. I think it's the equivalent of about just under £10,000 a year. It's not a lot. So you're going to need something to top it up with. So that's why you have things like a workplace pension. If you're working anywhere, you've probably been auto-enrolled, because once you're over the age of 22 and earning more than £10,000 per year, your employer has to auto-enroll you into pension. So you have to actively opt out of that pension.
I didn't know it was over 22.
Yeah,
I thought it was as soon as you start working.
No, 22 and £10,000 a year.
If you start working in a quote-unquote proper job from 20, you wouldn't get a pension up until that point.
No, like I remember vividly, I was working at Apple, like I mentioned, and I remember the day when I hit 22 and I got the letter through the post saying I've been auto-enrolled into my workplace pension. Wow. So before that, I had no pension. 22, cake year, you've been auto-enrolled.
Okay.
So 22 and £10,000 per year. Once those two things have been qualified, you'll get auto-enrolled. And the good thing about workplace pensions is that your employer makes contributions alongside you. So that contribution amount depends on your employer. It could be the minimum, it could be 3%. It could be matching yours, or it can be slightly more than yours. But it's essentially, the way I like to look at it is like a deferred pay rise. So it's extra money that you're getting from your employer that you may not get tangibly right now into your current account, but in 30, 40 years' time, that's money that they've given you on top of the money you're earning right now. So it's always good to try and see what your employer's contributing, see what you're contributing, see if you can up it at any point. You don't have to, but the more you have in that pension pot, the less stress you need to be. And on top of that, there are other products, like you can get a private pension, which is essentially just a pension that you contribute to yourself, and things like the lifetime ISA. If you're saving for a house and you've bought a house, you can also keep saving in it towards your retirement and get the bonus on top, which a lot of people don't realize you can do that as well. So you can have all of these accounts combined and save towards your pension. But it's just super duper important. Also, a good thing to note is with your pensions, I want everyone to be aware as to what their pension's doing for them. Mm-hmm. So when you get auto-enrolled, you'll get auto-enrolled into the default fund because it's invested on your behalf, and the risk level changes as you get older. So when you're younger, it's probably got a higher risk fund, and then as you get older and you start reaching the retirement age, it gets lower risk, right? But I want everyone to be aware of what their pension's doing for them. For example, if you're someone who has strong views on something, for example, you are very big on climate change. Yeah, there we go. Look at us. Very big on climate change, and you want to protect the environment, yet your pension is funding companies that are completely doing the opposite of that. You can go and make a change into that. Because I believe that any investments, any pensions should reflect your beliefs. Mm-hmm. You know, if you believe certain things and your pension's doing the opposite, you can pick the funds that it's going into. You just have to actively go and check. So if you're with a certain provider, you can either call them up, or sometimes they have apps now. So you can have it on the app and say, actually, I want to change my fund from this fund to this fund. And you can be in control of it. Because all they're going to do is just put you into the default fund and leave it there. Mm. But a lot of people have strong views on what they want their money to be doing for them because it's being invested into these companies with the intention that you're going to get a return later on in life to be able to live off your pension. So make sure it's invested in companies that you believe in.
So does every single pension automatically invest your money?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's not a savings account, it's an investment. Yeah.
I thought that they were just a savings account.
No.
With very good interest.
No.
That your employer also gives into.
No, it's invested.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that makes sense now because now I know that and I do choose the funds based on my financial advisor's advice that it should go into. But I didn't know that we all went into a default one.
Yeah.
I just thought
everyone gets thrown into a default one unless you change it. So I remember I got thrown into one and I did what you usually do. So I picked up the phone and I was like, okay, this fund looks a bit bland. What else do you have? And they took me through all the different ones and I just changed my fund based on what I wanted it to be doing for me. So yeah, everyone can go ahead and change their pension fund to reflect what they want it to be doing for them.
Nice. Okay. So a lot to unpack there. People will say, I don't need to work and I'm earning so little if you take away tax and national insurance and all these other things. I don't want the deduction of pension as well. So I'm going to buy properties and that's going to be my pension.
Do you know what's funny? I was in a cab the other day. So I live in Ipswich and I was in a cab to the station. And I was talking to the man, 'cause at the time I was going to do a TV appearance. So he asked me about what I do, blah, blah. So people always do this. They start telling me about their finances because they've got a little bit of time with me. They want to get my opinion on things. So he started telling me about his finances. And he was
you
about...
need to start charging, boy.
I know, right?
With a card reader.
I should have had a free cab ride, to be fair. Yeah, that's what I should have had. But he was telling me about his finances. He was about 5 years away from retirement. And he was telling me, I said to him, have you got a pension? What does that look like? He hasn't got a pension. Never had a pension, right? He's like, but I've got 2 properties. So that rental income will pay me. That's what I'm hoping for.
Fine.
And I said, oh, okay. I said, all right, yeah, fine. And he was like, what, should I have had a pension? And I said, well, I mean, property is not a bad thing. However, I don't believe it should be the sole thing. There is no harm in having multiple facets. You're right. If you're someone who's in the early stages of their career, I don't know, you just, entry level, you're on 24K, 26K, you know. Any deduction means a lot to you because you're not earning much.
Yep.
Absolutely right. Like, you can pause your contributions for a while or maybe dial it down to the bare minimum. But I don't think if you can, again, we're in a cost of living crisis, I get it. If you can keep contributing, I would recommend you keep contributing because it's all money that's going to help you out in the longer run. However, if you are in financial straits and for a period of time you need to stop. But it is really important to have different avenues because property is great, but God forbid, let's say something happens and one property falls to ruins. Now, this was meant to be your pension fund, essentially, and one property is completely fallen to ruins. You need to fix it. You don't have the money to fix it because this is meant to be paying you out 2K a month for you to live off. Now you've lost one. Now what do you do? If that's the only thing that you're relying on, you're going to struggle. which is why I think it's so important. That's what people always say. You should have multiple different pension pots, have different things that are going to fund your pension. Because when you get to that age, bearing in mind that this is the one pot. So if you get to retirement age and you have £50,000 in there, that is meant to take you from 65, which it is at the moment, to the end of your life. And the longer you live, the more pressure that money has to stretch over that time. So if it's 50k and 65 is when you retire and you don't pass away until 85, 20 years that 50k is meant to work for you. Which is why a lot of people, and I see a lot of older people, go back to part-time jobs because they physically can't afford to not work.
Yeah.
And if you don't want that, you've got to be starting as early as possible to make sure you've got money in there. And you'll be surprised. I did a calculator the other day for someone because they're like, how much do I need to have in my pension pot? And I was like, how much roughly do you want it to pay you out? You know, you say, I want maybe like 16k a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you're thinking, remember, a lot of things will be paid off. We're not living a lifestyle that we're doing now, right?
It'll mainly be your own expenses.
Own expenses, a few bills at home, and if you want to travel, that kind of stuff, right? So that person said 16k a year, right? And we did retirement age 65. Let's say they're going like 87.
And this is outside of savings.
It's outside of savings. So we're just talking about pensions. How much you need in your pension pot. We're not talking about any savings you have anywhere else. We're talking about property, just pension pot. They would need to have a payout of 16k a year. The number was something astronomical. Like they needed like 700k in their pension pot. And they were in their mid-30s. And they were like, oh my gosh. Because when we traced it back of how much they have to start saving, like we were like, from today, you need to start putting away £700 into your pension pot. Because you're starting in your mid-30s, like from today. We're not talking about workplace. We're just talking about like if you were just going to save personally, that's what you need to put in. Obviously, workplace, you get the benefit of your employer. But that is a massive amount. So I urge anyone, go online. There's loads of free pension calculators. Figure out how much you want at retirement age, and that will give you a better understanding to say, well, I need to up my contributions, or maybe I'm all right. Maybe I'm contributing just about enough right now. But those numbers, 50k at retirement, that's nothing.
I think the crossover and the bad rep that pensions get in our communities is that sadly a lot of people don't think they're going to live that long and they don't want a provision for that. Also, they don't have access to the extra contribution from the workplace, so they would have to do it all for themselves. And people just don't believe that they would get that money. They really think that something would happen because they're so mistrusting of banks and all the rest of it that they don't think they would actually get that payout.
I mean, it's a valid concern. I think it's definitely a concern I've heard many times before. But pensions, I remember being 22, filling out the forms of my pension, and you have to name beneficiaries. And I was thinking, me at 22, I was thinking, I'm not thinking about death at 22. I go, what? But that is who your pension is going to go to should you not get to the point where you can draw upon it.
Yeah.
And I've had people who unfortunately lost family members during COVID, and those family members were close to retirement age but didn't reach it, which is unfortunate. But their pensions, the ones who assigned them, not everyone nominates beneficiaries, but the ones who did were able to nominate to their close family members who were then able to use it maybe towards funerals, use it to help their families. That's what you want it to happen. Hopefully you can use it yourself. That's the aim. But if you can't, you want to be able to give it back to your family so they're not struggling, because funerals cost a lot of money. Upkeep costs a lot of money. If you pass away, we have to figure out if you live in a property, if you're renting, you still have to pay the rent for the minute. If you didn't pay the rent, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that come into it, and not people don't. Like, you as a person, you haven't financially planned for that if your family members passed away. So there are that, but I do understand that there are setbacks in our communities as to why people don't have pensions. However, I see more people who have reached retirement age still working in our communities that I think shouldn't be. People's parents who are 68 still working, 70 still. I'm like, they shouldn't be working. I don't want my dad to be working at that age. And he won't be because he's planning his pension. So he'll be drawing, my dad's ready. He's ready today. And he's not near it yet. He's ready today to stop. But that's because he spent years working, years contributing, that he's doing that. And then other people's parents, I'm like, if we had more conversations in our community about pensions, if we had provisions set up so people could understand, so you don't have to work, then I think we'd be in a better place.
Totally agree. When you're self-employed, how do you handle the pension thing? Is it just then a matter of paying into a lifetime ISA, which gives you a quarter of whatever you put in as a bonus, and you just use that as your pension?
So that's one way, you can do that. What people would usually do is you'd open up something called a SIP. So I've got that. It's a self-invested personal pension or private pension.
And you have that as well as being in a normal one through work? Or can you only have that if you are
self-employed?
You
can get a SIP or like a private pension basically, but if you are self-employed, that is the one you definitely will want to get,
right?
Because you have no employer. Okay. So like for me, I don't have an employer. I am my employer, so I need to be contributing myself to my pension. And you'd open it up and you'd make your contribution depending on what it looks like for you. When you're self-employed, I'm aware there's months when my income is higher and other when it's lower. So because it's self-invested, because you can control it, you can pick how much goes into it. So you can pick a set amount, maybe that's 5% I'm going to contribute. Or you might say, you know what, this month, this invoice isn't clear in time, so I'm going to put in less and I'm going to put in more when I get paid the following month.
Sure.
But that gives you that autonomy around how much you put into your pension. But it's so important. I can't remember the exact numbers again, but there are stats out there. There are so many self-employed people who don't have a pension.
No, I didn't.
So
I would have carried on through life, not having one, not thinking about it, and just being like, yeah, I'm going to earn loads now, so it's not going to matter. But that was my mentality. Up until very recently, that's been my mentality. But again, when you have, I think, assets, and when you are at a stage where you're planning or you're getting near to starting a family, maybe, you start thinking about these things and you're like, And I think what makes it so hard and where they catch you, because really and truly, people, the state, want us to keep working, let's be honest. So it's not in their interest for us to know and have these conversations about pensions and to make it easy to understand and to say something as simple as that, a SIP. I didn't know about that. That's not well documented or put out there for mediums that I consume. So I think the way they get you is by making it seem so far off. They make 65 seem so far and so crazy of a number that it doesn't seem relevant to us now. But the way that I've normalized that is my mum is 58 now and she would love to retire tomorrow if she could. But she doesn't seem that old to me because she's my mum. We're like sisters. Do you know what I mean? Most people's parents don't seem that old to them. But just think, it's easy to imagine yourself at their age, I think, easier. So just normalize you're going to be at their age soon and where you're going to feel and where you want to be. And that will help you understand the importance of a pension and also that it isn't as far as we think it is.
Yeah.
We really believe it's so far off in 65. Oh my gosh. But look how quickly years go. We're in December already. Well, when this comes out, it'll be 2024 already. COVID was like a flash.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh my gosh.
So things like that could happen. We could have another 10-year COVID. That's 10 years gone. You come out of that, you're almost 60.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like, my dad's 50 and some workplace pensions allow you to withdraw it from 55, which is going up to 57, I believe, in 2028. And I think my dad's going to be just on that threshold, just when they're going to move it up. And he's really upset. He's like, I hope it's not 57. I want it at 55. But even just seeing him, because like you, my dad's not old to me. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you're actually going to be taking on your pension soon. But you're not even that old. I'm like, keep working, son. Keep going. But when you start putting yourself in their shoes, and he was contributing from as young as possible, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to make sure I'm contributing. I'm telling my brother, my brother's 20. I'm like, right, you start contributing in a couple of years. Your pension's so important. And no, it's not this fun, exciting thing. That's why I always talk about it to young people, especially because it's not fun. But a lot of finance isn't fun. It's not going to be. It's going to be a necessity. Like, you just have to do it to make sure that you're not struggling and not in a bad place. Like I said, that cab driver, that conversation we had, he almost sounded a bit shaky when after we spoke. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I've only got property. What am I going to do? I've got 5 years." And like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not set up right. What am I going to do?" And there were stats that came out a couple of years ago that Scottish Widows did, and it was like looking at black and ethnic minority background, and they were asking people who are almost at retirement age what they're going to rely upon. So the biggest part, pensions was at the lowest. The biggest part was
out of the family.
No, the biggest part was property.
Okay.
Then it was other assets, so like other investments that they have elsewhere. Then it was kids. Their kids are their pensions.
Mum, if you're listening, don't look at me. I promise you, I'm not playing because I don't have it to give.
It was surprising that was quite a high percentage. When I say high,
I'm not surprised by that.
I mean, it was like 15-16%, but that was higher than I expected it to be. I thought it might be like 2%. But I was like, wow. And I was speaking to a lot of my friends' parents, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's fine. My daughter's here.
She's going to look after me.
He's going to have a good job. And I'm like, I said, Pops, if you ever look at me like that, you'll be so disappointed. I'm so sorry. But that's what a lot of
and it's so interesting because I can almost guarantee if you did the same survey in white communities.
They did. the number, I think pensions was top, then it was houses, then it was, no, pensions, then I think other assets, then property, then something else, and then kids was like 3%, 2%. It was nothing.
But do you see, and this is where we go on now, we use this buzzword of generational wealth and passing something down, and this is how they pass things down. If you give all your money to your parents, not that saying that you shouldn't help out, obviously, but if your mum thinks you are her cash cow as she gets on, how are you going to pass something down to your kids?
It's true.
Because we talk like that because we're all in this life where we think we're going to make it and be glamorous and have the 9 to 5 and something else happen on the side and all of this. And it's like, I'll be honest with you. I worked from when I was 16 as like, normal 16 job. Didn't go to uni, went straight into work at 18. Have been working since then. I'm tired now and I'm only 27. So in 20 years, I'm not going to be on it. I promise you I'm not going to be on it. Yes, the hope is that I'm successful enough to be able to do X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, you've only got a certain finite amount of hours in the day. And when you start getting older as well, you start to realise that although this sounds exciting, and yes, on paper, I could fill every minute of my day with earning money. I could. I can't do that for my mental health, for my happiness, for my spiritual. I can't do it. So then instantly that number diminishes and gets less. So you want to be in a position where you do have a net. We need to normalize having a net.
Yeah.
But we don't. We just think, oh, this is, and I get why. 100% get why. But we need to change that. I hope these kind of conversations do.
I hope so, because I mean, for me, and I think when you just look at your parents, like I don't want my dad to be working forever, and I'm glad that he's set up. And I think, as I've mentioned before, we have very open conversations about money in my household. So he's told me about like his pension pot. I know how much is in there. And he was telling me, obviously, so I know that he's fine, number one. But number two, God forbid if anything were to happen to him, it's almost like these are the assets that should be passed to you and your brother.
Yeah.
Not that you're out of the loop. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, family members pass and you're like, how much do they have? No idea. My dad's like, nope, this is everything I have. So if you're ever looking for something, this is where that is, blah, blah. So we had that conversation.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I don't want to reach that point, and I want to make sure that you have something to give to your kids. Like you said, your kids shouldn't be your pension. So that's what you need to figure out from now, particularly when you don't need it. You're younger, you're working, just let those contributions come out of your workplace. Yeah, it's not fun, your pay slip, just let it come out.
Honestly, if you're paying student finance, I don't see why that is a biggie.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Just touching on mental health there, briefly. I listened to an episode you did on your podcast, and your guest was speaking about mental health.
Yes.
And she'd set something up.
Yes. So Celine, she's got her company called Solutions.
Solutions,
Yes.
that was it. And she was speaking about a statistic where the majority of people who have mental health issues often struggle with money because A, you may not be able to manage it, or B, you may not be able to earn it in these environments. And I just want to make clear that the conversations we're having, whilst I stand by them, I completely understand that everyone's in a different situation and that everybody is not going to be able to earn in the same way, and people's mental health differs. I get that. But if you're going to live in this environment, and by this environment maybe a high-paced living city like London, which is where I live and where you live, it's going to be unavoidable. And I think that money is a massive part of people's mental health. It can really, really plunge your self-esteem when you don't have money to spend, especially now that it's thrust in front of you everywhere you look. I think worse for men, sadly, where they're expected to spend on all kinds of things and to gain women's affection through money as well. So I get that. And I would just say that if you know that that's going to be something that you're going to really struggle with forever, then I think that it's time to really look at what serves you and if London life really serves you. Do you think that's controversial to say?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think money and mental health, that link often isn't made with a lot of people. If
I'm honest, I've got a lot of people around me who struggle with their mental health, and that episode that you did with your friend was the first time I ever thought about it in that way. And since then, I've had friends who have ADHD, for example, and a close friend of mine actually is going through something with her work at the moment, and she had, in her case to her job, reeled off a statistic with something like I don't want to say a statistic wrong, but a high percentage of people who have are on the autism spectrum or have ADHD struggle to stay in full-time employment, and the reason is employers don't meet their needs, and therefore you can't earn effectively. But you want to, you just can't do it. So yeah, like you said, it's not a connection that's made often. I myself, who's quite learned in this, didn't make that connection.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's something that people should identify, because in that same episode, she mentioned about like journaling to actually better your mental health, and that can also work with your money and your finances. If you're someone who says, "Oh, do you know what? I'm just not good with money." Some people who are already in maybe a not so great mental state will just paint themselves with a brush and say, "I'm just bad with money." And you're not bad with money. You probably have money habits you need to unlearn. And a lot of people don't know what those are until you sit down and you unpick it. And the easiest way that she mentioned to actually unpick that is to journal. Write out every day, say, "Hey, so I'm feeling today. This went well. I spent on this." Then you can kind of see where your spending goes. After a week, you've got a week's worth. After a month, you get to track back and say, "Oh, actually, now you can correlate. The day I was having a bad day, I spent loads of money online on stuff. And when I was having a good day, I was good." You know what I mean? You can actually track your behavior. So when things happen and you can start to identify your triggers, now you can say, right, I'm going to make sure I'm not going to do that. Because usually when I'm sad, I go and I order Uber Eats and I spend a stupid amount of money on Uber Eats. And when I'm happy, I'm more likely to cook. So maybe if I feel like an episode's going to come on and I'm not going to feel great, I'm going to try and cook in advance or leave some stuff so I can actually not. Do you know what I mean? You can actually identify and mitigate around your triggers to help your finances.
And even signposting as well, other people to handle your money for you.
Exactly.
Who are good, not people who are also struggling. People who are in a better position with their money mentality and their moods maybe, or mental health state, who you can rely on, who've got your best interests at heart, and who you can go to with the tracking of your mood, for example. I know I'm feeling low today, so therefore I'm going to spend more on X. You feel that thing, you make the habit. Okay, as soon as I'm feeling low, I've transferred the money I have for the week to Kia, for example. And then Kia knows I'm going to give this out to another person. And it might be like, oh gosh, that I don't want to depend on anyone. I need to be doing this myself, etc., etc. But people do that for less. Look at the crime that we spoke about a second ago. There are very high-profile, profit-heavy drug dealers who don't have money in their own name. They don't have their own bank account. Theirs is because they can't. Yours is because you can, but you are making a smarter decision to put your money in places that you can actually access it effectively.
I agree. Yeah. There you go. You always take that one and you wrap it up. There you go.
You'd think it's my podcast or something.
I know, right?
Coming back to people, parents passing away, uncomfortable topic, not spoken about a lot. What's your perspective on life insurance? Because that is a finance thing, but it falls under insurance. And people automatically, again, in our communities, insurance, what's the point? I ain't doing that. Waste of money. Oh, it's a scam. I just want to take my money, etc.
Yeah, life insurance it's an interesting one. It's, like I said, it's one that people have different perspectives on in our communities. It's one that I would say everyone should have a look into. Obviously, the younger you are, the cheaper you are, the older you get, because you're more likely to get ill and have ailments, the more expensive it gets. But it's just another provision to make sure that you're okay if anything goes wrong. And if you haven't already gathered from this episode, there are things that can go wrong. And if you haven't got those provisions in place, it's just going to cost you an arm and a leg. So life insurance is something that you should have conversations with your family, with your parents. Do they have it? Do they not? If they don't, what do they have in place? Especially, I would say, if you are self-employed, that's something you should be looking to, because your income's really precarious. If something now happens to you, if you have to incur medical bills, anything, you need to have something to fall back on, and you may not have that money in cash. So I think it's always there's a lot of insurances out there. Some of them aren't necessary, and some of them are. Life insurance, I think, is one that you should definitely have a look at and consider, and have that conversation with your parents. I think a lot of, especially ethnic parents, that's all I can speak about, especially in the Black community, you talk about stuff like that, they think you're trying to kill them off. That's what they think. They think you're trying to kill them off and take their money. And that's not the case. You're trying to make sure that actually, if something were to happen, you're not left with that financial burden to deal with.
I was listening to Viola Davis's book on Spotify. Love that Spotify does that now,
I know, it's my favourite. I listen to so many.
But you only get 15 hours a month, so I'm always going over.
Yeah, same.
Anyway, she mentioned it in her book. Her parents were the lifestyle their parents live was mad. So much stress, so much abuse of like alcohol, drugs, all the rest of it. And she's obviously in a good financial position at this point. And her husband said to her, take out insurance on your parents. Things can happen in their life and you will not know how to deal with it because there is no provision. There aren't these conversations. We don't know how to handle these things. And she listened and she did. And then as soon as her parent did pass away, she called her husband and she's like, this has happened. And he was like, right, all you do, you call the insurance company, you tell them what's happened, you send them the death certificate, they take care of everything. I'm not saying it's as seamless as that, but I think we all need to be honest and we look at our parents. Majority of them have had a hard time and they've really sacrificed a lot for us to thrive in the way that we do. They are stressed. They're stressed, they're ill, they're tired, all the rest of it. Things can happen at any point, as unfortunately we know. It is smart to have the conversations with them. And if they aren't in a position to take out these things on themselves, such as insurances and setting up pensions and wills and all the rest of it, then you should take the action to help them do that.
I agree. You always do a mic drop.
I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Any final things you want to say to anyone? This is your last episode. Will you be back again?
If you want me back,
have you enjoyed your time?
I've had a great time.
Really?
We've shared a lot, and I think it's been really insightful. And I'm just grateful to have this platform to be able to do such. So thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure.
Trying to think anything.
I'll come to yours soon.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see the crossover soon. Trying to think any last things I want to share. No, if you take anything from this, have a look at your pension. See if you're contributing to one already, workplace. If you are, where are you contributing? Are you happy with it? If not, make a change. And if you're self-employed, definitely set up your own pension. Doesn't matter how much you put in there, just start contributing. And use a pension calculator so you have a good understanding. Like I would tell anyone with any kind of goal, if you want to get a house, you should know how much you're saving for so you can work backwards. Same with a pension.
Good. Okay. I would say as well, listen to all the episodes because every single one's got a different gem. The investments ones is a biggie for me because I think that's the one that scares our community at the age we're at now because there's a lot of talk about it. We want it. It's right there, but we're scared. But what you said was a massive hack. Stocks and Shares ISA does it for you. S&P 500 is a fund which you can just put money into and that does it for you as well. But you can nominate and elect what funds you want inside there. Tech ones, I don't know, retail ones, whatever ones exist. Correct?
Yeah.
And the other thing is as well, making it habitual to save and invest at every paycheck. I think that's the last thing I didn't get growing up. The savings one, no problem. The investments one, not so much, which is not uncommon again. But again, I'm lucky to be in a position where I can do the work myself, have conversations like this. I would recommend investing in a financial advisor. And before you do absolutely anything, go and find out the psychology behind why you don't do these things because nothing's going to change if you aren't doing it, really. Yeah. It's not hard to know saving money is good. We all know that. Why don't you? What is the problem? What's the stopping you? That's what we need to solve before we're able to do anything. And you made the recommendation of your friend's podcast, Mind, Money, Soul, and check that out. And I think that's all I can say, really.
Yeah, I think that's good.
It's been great. I've really enjoyed. Same. Please, everybody, listen, show love, share. The numbers of the listens need to be upping all the time. I see it. The crawl is there, but I want it to be a run. And I want the subscriptions to be there. Please support. I know you enjoy it because you message me all the time on Instagram to tell me, but I just want to see that in the analytics. So please, can we make that happen more? Sharing, reviewing, rating, all the rest of it. Kia is at Pennies to Pounds Podcast.
Yes.
IES with the pennies. And at IKea on her personal Instagram. At Myers Minutes Podcast on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening and sharing. And we will see you in the next series.
Bye. That was really good.
Over and out.
Over and out. 4.